Hey friends, it's your old pal Brian here once again with another video. I recently had the pleasure of catching up with sister agency nerd brethren Adam Buhler, head of creative technology at Digitas, and Keith Soljacich, head of innovation at Pub Media, about their recent trip to Cannes. Is it Cannes? I think it's Cannes. I don't know. In this video, we're going to discuss how technology was front and center at the Festival of Creativity and just other agency nerd stuff. So check it out. And without further ado, hey gentlemen, thanks for hanging out with me today. You guys just got back from Cannes.
Oui, as it were.
Oui. Oh, how exotic. I can really tell like there's a rosé glow in both of you that you didn't have before you went.
It's hard. It takes about a week to get it out of your system.
I had Cannes at home.
I also went to VivaTech the week before, which is Publicis Group's version of CES in Europe, effectively the Consumer Electronics Show. The sense that I got from VivaTech was that the generative AI is beginning to evolve and to shard down into smaller units that are more specialized and more apprenticed to specific tasks, where you might have a large language model, a version of ChatGPT that just focuses on like tax preparation for your business, and another instance of it that does HR and recruiting and so forth. So this specialization apparently makes these tools stronger and more focused and gives more business value.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, when you have a ChatGPT, right, do you need to replicate a ChatGPT? I could see how this could really accelerate some of those more narrow use cases in the sense of it doesn't have to be able to invent anything out of thin air. It needs to invent very specifically something that is based on data.
I'm a huge fan of AI as a component. Smaller onboard, more powerful AIs built into hardware that doesn't need internet access or anything else, like AI in something like the Samsung Jet Stick, where it can determine how much suction power and where the brush should be based on and analyzing your carpet, has existed for a long time. But if you're componentizing language models, like what does that enable in product experiences that you haven't been able to do before?
Yeah, specialization allows for shrinking and reduction. I was just listening to the head of Stability AI the other day talking about how they had designed their LLMs to accommodate 128 or so different use cases, and they found that people were actually only using like 8 of those on a regular basis. And when they optimized the code, they got like a ratio of 1:50 reduction in the size of the footprint of the code itself. But I know you wanted to talk about France and Cannes and glamour.
I
think
I can talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. But yes, glamour, rosé, Cannes, Mediterranean, south of France. What was the vibe like, guys?
Oh man, my first time there. Been in the industry for 20 years and certainly very aware of Cannes Lions and the Festival of Creativity, and gives you a different perspective naturally, and also really a different vibe of how the conversation's moving and certainly how it's bouncing around. You get a really sense of where the industry's at based on who's spending money to be located where. The platforms are a lot closer to center, the Googles, the Metas, the Reddits. You got upstart platforms and partners as well, like Influential, showing up on the Croisette. And that's just signaling to you that there's this coming kind of turnover. So it really felt like a turning point year in the conversation and where everybody was geographically located.
What's interesting about that too, technology mining people at agencies are getting invited to Cannes.
That one thing that I did hear in every context and in every stage was a variant of this idea that there are epochs, and the first one was the web, and the next one was mobile, and on top of that was social, and now of equal import is generative AI. And that might be part of the premise of why technology was at the table this time. In the air, you could feel the electricity around this idea that things were really changing in a significant way. And nobody regardless of station or industry or vertical, could confidently make any predictions about what the space is going to look like in a year or two. And that feeling was exciting and scary at the same time. And I think that was the buzz in the air the whole time in Con.
Yeah, when people get scared, they want to bring in the nerds. It's always been the case.
Calling the
Famous
nerds.
Adam, yeah, tell me a little bit about your impressions.
Well, I was pretty focused on the AI track, but I went to see the talks by the players in the space, the open AIs and the Nvidias. I think that Nvidia are remarkably well positioned to cash in on the explosion of generative AI. Who knew that a company that manufactured gaming GPUs would turn out to have the ideal substrate technology for AI computation? They have their Omniverse platform, which is sort of a system to collaborate on digital twin technology for industrial applications and designing cars and things like that. And I hadn't made the imaginative leap, the new context that they're bringing Omniverse forward, which is as a media production platform and being able to use that 3D rendering system to take CPG brand products or automotive and render them in any context that you can imagine, right? So they're revving up a platform to just scale up the media generation process infinitely.
Nvidia makes hardware that was like perfectly designed to do this, even though it wasn't the original intent as it's being used today. I would just go on as to say, like, historically, video games, particularly computer video games, have been driving technological innovation in digital for a very long time. Seventh Guest came out, everybody had to have a CD-ROM suddenly.
I haven't thought about Seventh Guest in
but that's what
years.
happened. It was like the first game that had digitized video in it, digitized audio. People saw it and heard about it, and like they had to go out and get that hardware. That's just one example, but it happens over and over and over again.
Well, those guys are crushingly focused on performance, right? Like getting every last iota of performance out of whatever hardware and software mix they've got. So it makes sense that they would be the tip of the spear in innovation.
Was lucky enough to sit on a panel and have a conversation in this topic collective called Art Class. They're creators, producers, directors, and they were partnered up with OpenAI to host a session for creators and these creators themselves. They said, look, I worked in a certain technology and things were important to me before, right? It was like what art tools did I have with my Wacom tablet, or was I for sure on a Mac? These creators are saying, look, I've had to change over my entire workflow here, including a rendering PC to be able to crank out this incredible generative AI creative designs or synthetic media, essentially. And so the tools of the trade I see are changing too, like what creators need.
We've been saying it from the beginning, like AI isn't going to replace creatives. AI is a tool. Part of being creative is finding out ways to use a tool that wasn't envisioned by the creators of the tool.
The Google presentation actually really focused on this issue, and their artists should not fear this new tool. And they drew this long extended analogy to the invention of photography. And when it first appeared in the 1800s, people had a really fierce backlash against it because they thought it was going to be the death of painting.
What photography did do was change painting. Because of photography, we got impressionists, expressionists, we got surrealists, because those were all things that you couldn't do with a camera. Whereas before, being photorealistic with your painting style was everybody's main goal, how you can make something look totally real. And once that became obsolete, it actually freed painters.
Well, you need to go back to the 1800s and let them know that everything's going to be okay.
Well, they got a lot more to worry about than cameras.
One of the announcements they had coming out of Cannes is a new service that they're going to be offering. It's a gaming service. Now Stadia is closed down, but what they're doing is they're launching a new platform, and it's like YouTube Shorts for games. And the idea is you flip through games like you flip through TikTok and YouTube Shorts until you find a mini game that is compelling to you, interesting to you, or something maybe you played before. I can only imagine that the majority of the content that's going to live on this platform is going to be AI generated gaming. This idea that the content can be very ephemeral is absolutely going to be a thing. You didn't invest that much time creating the thing. So how much time would I expect you to invest in experiencing the thing? We generate the type of content we consume. And that was certainly a topic of conversation this week is what is the state of content now when it's so easy to create?
So let's shift a little bit and talk about the work. I'm really interested in creative ways that AI metaverse have come to life in campaigns at Cannes this year.
Well, I sat in a session with Lego and Epic Games about 6 or 8 months ago. It's been some time now. Lego and Epic Games made an announcement that they're forming a partnership. But now at Cannes, and they used Cannes as the showcase to unveil everything they're going to be doing as part of the partnership. So the online multiplayer game or metaverse world that they're creating, similar to a Lego with Roblox, is really exciting. Lots of Lego IP or IP they've licensed. Looks like it'll be in there. But they're also working with Epic Games on packaging design and development of their content series and their marketing materials and their activations. And they're really looking at how can you use a game engine powered by a whole lot of artificial intelligence tools, of course, to really invent your entire brand approach to go to market. LVMH made a similar announcement the week before that Lego did a few months ago. So it'll be interesting to see where they go in this space. Ted Lasso collaboration with EA Sports cleaned up, won a Grand Prix. Oreo, an Xbox partnership, did really well with their I think it was cheat cookies campaign, just by scanning Oreos with a little computer vision, unlocked in-game content, stringing together a whole lot of really future-forward technology.
Those kinds of things always make me a little itchy, because the idea that you scan these cookies with image recognition to unlock some sort of brand interaction, my inner black hat always immediately leaps to how I would thwart that and how I would scam that and figure out how to circumvent whatever they put in place to keep people from getting thousands of golden tickets or whatever.
Gamers don't do that, Adam. What are you talking about?
Oh, then I must have been misplacing my concern.
The campaign that won the Grand Prix for innovation was called the Mouth Pad. The idea behind the Mouth Pad is people who have spinal cord injuries, who don't have use of their hands, really still struggle with accessibility and using any of our digital technology. The Mouth Pad, though, it's a device that you put in almost like a mouth guard for football or hockey, and underneath your upper palate is a touch sensitive pad, and so you can use your tongue to essentially control the scroll of your phone or the movement of your mouse, or to tap on something that you've highlighted. It's a total game changer for people living with disability, and it won a Grand Prix very deservedly. So it's incredible.
I remember a long time ago people playing with brain scanners that was doing a similar thing. Yes, everybody put on your foil hats now.
We used to have a ton of those in our office. The thing where you would concentrate and you'd make the ping pong ball go up and down in the tube. So much mental energy went into that. Yeah. My favorite innovation ideas are the ones where afterward you go, how did nobody think of that for all of these decades? And for me, it was one of the major car brands won for allowing the fire departments of different nations to collaborate in designing the structure of the cars themselves, because it turns out that when you have an accident, the difficulty that the firefighters and first responders have in extricating you from the mangled vehicle is where the bad stuff happens. To pry open one of these damaged cars is very time consuming and surprisingly inaccessible and difficult. And so by rethinking the way the cars are actually built and taking dozens of different suggestions from first responders, they just fundamentally changed the equation of what happens when somebody gets into an accident. And the car immediately disgorges the person and you're good to go. I like that one. And then at the other end of the spectrum, one of my favorites was, because of its almost ludicrous simplicity, was the McDonald's campaign. The insight was the McDonald's Golden Arches are so iconic that people can communicate their feelings and desire for this consumer product wordlessly. And the campaign just has people in an office setting and one looks at the other and just arches her eyebrows in the shape of the M. And there's just a tiny bit of CGI to sort of exaggerate it. Just enough where you go, something is uncanny valley there. But she just, raises her eyebrows, and then the person across the table does the same thing. And suddenly everybody is wordlessly communicating with this facial icon, I guess it is. And, the idea is so brutally simple that there's nothing more you could do with that. And that struck me as well. So I went for extremes. And in between, of course, there was, a wide range of brilliance. It was kind of overwhelming. In Cannes, they have a basement, and all of the submissions each get a placard about, 2 feet by 2 feet with an image and a description. And there's hundreds of them. And by the time you get from one end of the hall to the other, you feel like just packing it in, right? You're like, oh my goodness, all in one place. It's pretty humbling.
Okay, what about innovation for good?
I mean, you don't have to look too far. You can look right at the Titanium Grand Prix winner. And it's absolutely an incredible campaign. It's a campaign called the First Digital Nation. The nation of Tuvalu. It's affected by climate change so significantly that the nation will be sucked up by the sea and will no longer exist. If you no longer have land as the nation, you no longer have technical borders, you'll actually lose a whole lot of privileges. Citizens lose their citizenship. You lose, seats at the UN. I mean, really, it effectively ends the line of your culture right there. And so the idea behind the First Digital Nation is they're taking the entire country of Tuvalu, digitally scanning it to create a digital twin of Tuvalu, digitally scanning all of their archives, all of their tribal elders' stories, and they're digitizing essentially their entire culture and creating the first digital nation. And being the first digital nation, so they'll host their council meetings, and they'll host community meetings, and they'll host national meetings, and all that, any get-togethers in this metaverse space, right? So they actually can continue to perform acts of the state. They continue to exist as a nation completely digitally. And this was announced at COP27 last year, which is the largest sustainability conference in the world, supported by the United Nations, and they are getting signatures from other countries to acknowledge them as a digital nation. It's kind of funny, Brian, the thought that the metaverse is dead really takes on a whole new meaning when you look at how this technology could be so transformative that we can actually save and preserve countries and culture in this space. That's not technology that I don't think any of us want to die off.
Dude, I love when work gets into Philip K. Dick land. That's a Philip K. Dick story. It's literally.
Well, it's nationhood as purely a mental construct supported
Right.
by a technological platform. It's a really great idea.
Couple last questions. Adam, artificial intelligence, generative AI, here to stay or a flash in a pan tech that's going to go away?
I'm going to sidestep your question and respond by saying we are at the peak of the hype cycle. And whatever comes after the peak of the peak, we're infinity beyond that. It's madness. Every conversation had generative AI in it. It doesn't matter if you were talking about where to go for dinner or what it might have been. Like that's how prevalent it was there. And as you can imagine, the now pretty beaten to death topic of, should I fear AI? Is it going to steal my job? It was as if all of the conversations around that topic that have been happening over the last few months started afresh in France. So that was, still also highly prevalent. But yeah, it's not going away. It's only going to get tremendously more powerful in the very near term. We're not quite ready for what's coming, but there is more hype than I was able to wade my way through in France.
Often past the peak on a mountain is a cliff. So let's.
Yes.
One of the smartest things I heard was when AI comes in and is able to do the things that the internet does or that we all do, that means you're at the end of that cycle, because we've trained it to be able to do the things we had to figure out as humans. So we've been training the AI for almost 20 years, right? Now we're at the end of that cycle. That's pretty clear that something else is coming behind that. And I'm an unabashed evangelist of the metaverse, of XR, of spatial computing, whatever we end up calling it. And it's clear now, you start to see some of these technologies merge together and what they can do. They're actually solving each other's problems, because what was really hard about the metaverse, right? Well, it's really expensive to create 3D graphics and all of this. Well, generative AI is coming in to solve that problem. Well, AI's got a problem with provenance. Who created this piece of content? Was that created by an AI or was that created by a human? Well, blockchain comes in to secure the provenance of that media and that asset, right? And then you're saying, well, how we've always been using generative AI in the blockchain space to create assets, but now with Web3 and with some of these new experiences where they're totally fully digital brands, they're utilizing artificial intelligence to create essentially the brand itself and the lore around the brand, and then they're using the metaverse to house the events. And so this may be the last year we really see all of these as distinct individual, and I think we're moving toward them all merging and melding together into the Web 3.0.
To that point, and it goes the other direction as well with the blockchain and Web3, because to get mass adoption of those technologies, if you're dealing with like raw blockchain, it's pretty intimidating to the average person. I mean, it's technologically challenging, and AI can come in and be a translation layer to make it really easy to interact with the fundamentals of Web3, right? It can be a whole UX layer. So not only can Web3 help secure the provenance of digital content, like you're saying, but also go in the other direction and make Web3 more accessible and more human in a conversational way, almost, to be able to interrogate the blockchain just by talking to it.
Hopefully more human than human.
More human than human.
Gentlemen, I really enjoyed this talk, and I think we should do this more often. Why, hello. I didn't expect to see you there. Oh, that was a long one. Hey, you know what? I'd love to know your thoughts about AI and metaverse and creativity and how it all comes together. Or any thoughts on Rosé. Feel free to reach out. You know how to get me. Until then, I'll see you in the metaverse.